Right, okay, today we're looking at the cash flow option in Sage 50 though. So it's an option that over the years, I've never really had many questions on it. I'm never sure whether it's just a really simple option and nobody has any questions on it, or whether it's maybe just an option that doesn't get a lot of use, people just aren't aware of. So we're going to run through that, let you have a look at it, again, just to try and broaden your horizons of some of those options that are available to you. So looking at the cash flow option within the bank accounts area. Now, contents-wise, agenda, what we're covering today, a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to try not to spend much time on slides today. It's much better I just get stuck into the demonstration. So if you've attended any of our quick learns, you'd be familiar with those. So we'll be looking at the obviously the option itself and trying to spend as much time on that as we can running through the demonstration so you can see that. Just towards the end, I'll explain more about the additional support that's available. Really easy to find the information in there. If you're on version 29 now as well, whenever you are in the software, you will have a little help option, top right-hand corner of the screen that you're on. You can just click that. It'll bring up the help relating to whatever it is you're looking at. Any other version, and also including version 29, if you just press F1 on your keyboard when you're working in the software, again, it will give you access to the relevant information. I'll explain some of the upcoming webinars towards the end of the session as well, and outline some of those that would also support you with other aspects of cash flow as well. Now, there are loads of webinar recordings, so the credit control webinars, how to get paid online, how to amend your invoice layout, so including things like your payment terms, all of which will feed into that support for your cash flow within your business. So I'll explain more about those and some of the ones that we've got planned in coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'll then hang around for questions, so keep your questions coming. As I say, you may need to bear with me here and there. A quick question from Donald there, can you run reports in archive? Yes, so yeah, the idea of an archive company, if you've got it saved as an archive, is that you can log into that company and you can run reports. It's there for reference and reporting purposes. So yes, you will have the same functionality will be in there. Right, okay, so let's get stuck in. So a little bit of background to the cash flow option. Been around for many years, this. You access it by going into the bank accounts area, and you'll have an option on your toolbar at the top, which you'll see in just a moment, called cash flow. Now in the cash flow, it will enable you to choose your forecast period. You can choose which bank accounts that you want to include in that forecast, and also of the transactions, which ones you want to include as well. Now, the cash flow option itself isn't available if you're on the essentials level of the software. That's something to be aware of. So just in case you haven't got that option available to you, you can't see it. If you are in essentials, you just won't have it. Beyond that, if you are on either standard or the professional level of the software, then you should have it available to you. Now, if you don't, it's either going to be your access levels. So if you need it, something that would need to be enabled onto your username. Or the other option is possibly you've just hidden it. It might be something, you never know. So when you attend these webinars and you think, right, actually that option, I've seen how it works, maybe it wouldn't benefit you. Then you can actually switch it off. So you can show or hide options within the software very easily as well. So again, if it's something that wouldn't benefit you, you can almost like declutter your toolbar just to remove that and hide it. You can always switch it back on should you need it. Now, if you have downloaded the handout, the link at the bottom there, the help center to the cash flow, it will take you to the relevant article, which I'm almost going to run through today to explain the information that's available within that cash flow forecast screen. So let's just get stuck in. We'll have a look at that one. So we'll switch across to my screen now, and we'll run through a bit of a demonstration for you. Right, now I am in version 29 today, and I am in the professional level of the software as well. So if you're on professional or even the standard edition of Sage 50, then you should pretty much have exactly the same options as myself. Again, if you're on essentials, you'll not have this option available. You never know. It might be something that you decide, well, it's another factor that would maybe upgrade to a higher level of the software for, and you can do that at any point as well. Anyway, we're going to go into bank accounts, and I'll just highlight my current account. It doesn't really matter which one you got selected at this point, but this is the cash flow option on the toolbar at the top here. So as I mentioned, if there are options on your toolbar that you won't be using, for instance, I mean, checks is there. Very rarely come across anyone using the checks option these days. For instance, if you didn't want to use that and it's listed and you wanted to declutter, you can just right click anywhere on your toolbar at the top, find the option on the list. So there's checks, for instance, and I can switch that off and I'll just hide it. That goes for any of the other options as well. If you don't use the cash register specific option, for instance, again, might be one you can hide. That goes for all the other modules as well, for that matter. So good little tip, that one for you. Right, so this is the cash flow option at the top. So I'll just give it a click. This is the cash flow forecast window. So when we first go in, we've got sort of three key areas. We've got this summary area, which I'll run through and explain the information that's there. We've got the bank accounts, and also we've got the transactions. So which ones do you want to include in your forecast? But let's start at the top here. So basically you choose when you want to run your forecast up to. Now you can choose it will default to the next 7 days, but you can choose different periods if you want. So next 14, the next month. Obviously that's going to be based on your program date going into the next month, next 2 months, 3 months, or you can even specify a custom range if you want. So specify your date range. The summary is we can't change anything in here. That's just a summary of based on the bank accounts that we've got selected, and we'll pick up on these figures and you'll see them changing as we start working through the demo this morning. I suppose the starting point once we set our date range is which of our bank accounts do we want to include in the forecast? So do we want to include petty cash, for instance? It will just default, I think it just defaults to selecting our bank current account by default. So do we want to select our petty cash account, for instance? Do we want to include that in the calculation? And you see, as soon as I do that, because petty cash has a balance against that account, it includes it in this book balance. Now the book balance itself, just coming back to that one, this is essentially the balance that's on the account as at now. It's not the reconcile balance, I must stress that one, it's the book balance. So it takes into account all transactions that are being posted. So even if I put a bank payment in for, say, in a date that next week, that would be included in that balance because it's a transaction that appears on the activity of the account. So that's where that figure's coming from. So select of anything, which accounts you want to include in the forecast. You do have an option as well to include inactive. Now, an account would only be flagged as inactive, bank account wise, if it has a zero balance. So chances are you're not going to want to include any inactive accounts on this list. Adds nothing to the cash flow. But it's there. So choose your bank accounts. Obviously your book balance will start to update. Now, at the moment, because I've got no transactions selected, or the ones that are listed, I've just got the one in my case, it doesn't show any regular payments, any forecast payments, regular receipts or forecast receipts. It gives me a forecast balance, and this is the balance really that you're interested in. What's the balance going to be based on the bank accounts I've selected and the transactions I've selected? So that's going to give you an idea what your cash position is going to be at. Now you'll see there's only one transaction listed at the moment. Now I can, if I need to, I've got this view option, and I can either view all transactions that essentially are posted against the relevant bank accounts or forecasted to be posted against these relevant bank accounts that I've selected. And I can choose whether I want to display all of them, whether it's the regular payments only. Maybe I just want to sit working through those first of all, so I could apply a filter to anything that's listed. I'll just leave mine set to all for the time being. Now, for a transaction to appear, it needs to be posted against one of these bank accounts that we got selected. And it needs to, the due date essentially needs to fall within, on, or prior to the forecast up to date that you specify at the top. Now, this is the only one I've currently got entered that does meet that criteria. Now, if I wanted to include that, I would tick the box, and you can see it's a sales invoice. It's due on the 20th. So within the next 7 days, I would expect to receive payment for this one. So I'm going to say yes, actually, I want to include that one in my cash flow forecast up to this period. It will give me the balance for the day, in this case, as at the 20th. And because it's the only thing I've got selected at the moment, it shows it in the summary area as well. Now, if I change that, and we can see we got forecast receipts, regular receipts, etc. So what do these mean? What transactions are going to be included in that list, basically? Now, I've got loads of transactions already entered. So what I'll do is I'm going to change that forecast to the next 2 months, so we can see actually I've got more transactions than that. Now, a regular payment, this one at the top here, that's going to be it's going to then show me, for a transaction to be classed as a regular payment, it's basically regular payments that you've got selected that fall within that period. And that's going to include recurring bank payments, recurring purchase payments on account, and recurring journal credits. So these are what essentially your recurring items. So within the bank area, if you've got recurring items set up, it will take those into account. It will read that information and say, right, well, within this forecast here, these are the, so I'll filter them, these regular payments. These are the transactions that you've got set up as recurring items. So it will pick those up. So be aware of that. That's where it picks that one up from. What it doesn't look at is just transactions that take place regularly. It's got to be set up as a recurring item within the bank area. And that's similar for your regular receipts as well. So regular receipts, again, from within the bank recurring items area, it's going to pull through your recurring bank receipts, any recurring sales receipts on account that you might have set up, and also any recurring journal debits. Now, obviously, if they're a recurring journal credit or debit, it's got to be posted to the bank account. So it's not just, if you enter a recurring journal, it's just the bank element that will be picked up in this area. If you've posted a journal and it's going to nominal 5,000, for instance, it's not picking that aspect of the journal. It's the entry against the bank account itself. So it's the cash element. So that's where it's picking those up from. Now, if you want to include them, obviously you would just tick the relevant boxes. So let's just switch back to all. So that's regular payments and regular receipts. So these refer to your recurring items. Now, a forecast receipt, this one here at the bottom, it's going to be looking at your invoices, so your sales invoices. Now, these are sales invoices that have been updated to the ledgers. It does not take into account, excuse me, it does not take into account any invoices on the invoices and credits list that haven't yet been updated to the ledgers. So if you've got an invoice and maybe you forgot to update that to the ledgers, it wouldn't include that, even if it falls within that forecast period. You've got to have updated it to the ledgers. So please bear that one in mind. So this one, as an example, this invoice, it's telling me the due date is the 31st of October. it falls, obviously it's listed because it falls within that period. So we'd expect this invoice to be paid by this customer by then. So if you wanted to include that in the forecast, we just tick the box. See, we get the running sort of forecast date as well. Now you can choose what sort of order you want your transactions listed. By default, I think it'll go in ascending order based on forecast date, but you might want to base it on due date instead. Now you'll probably find that your forecast date and your due date, so largely speaking, they're very much the same. But you can see this one isn't, this one at the top here, and that's because the due date will look at the actual individual transaction, whereas the forecast date will look at the actual customer's account. And within the customer's account, there's a field within the credit control that says average days to pay. So it will say, right, well, this customer, although that's the due date, we would expect to receive a payment from there. This is the forecast date. We might receive it a little bit earlier. So it will take that into account. So you can choose what order, but I think most people will actually base it on the due date itself. So you can see that transaction now, I've reordered them and it's a bit further down the list. So it's up to you what order you put them in. Obviously you can sort them by transaction type, in forecast date. You could do ascending or descending. Just depends what you want. Anyway, we'll just leave it set based on the forecast date, because generally speaking, you're probably going to find that yours are probably identical. There may be the odd one, but you tend to find they're virtually identical. So forecast receipts, sorry, I was going to say forecast payments. Forecast receipts is all about those invoices and when you expect to get paid by. So again, you can come down the list and say, right, this one, for instance, I'm aware of that one. I'd expect to be paid by that one. You can see you get the balance for the day as well. So that running balance running down that one. And again, it updates this forecast book balance as well. So that would just be automatically updated as you select your transactions along with these other balances as well. So that's your forecast receipts. Forecast payments, you're probably one step ahead of me, and it's all about purchase invoices. So have I got one on here? Yeah, I've got one there. So again, I've got an invoice on there, and the due date of that invoice in this case is the 1st of October. Would I expect to pay that by then? I'll tick it, and obviously it'll adjust the balances accordingly. So it's just a case really of coming in, setting your date range. You've got your summary, choose which bank accounts you want to include, and obviously your summary will then give you an idea of what your cash flow is going to be at the end of that period based on what you've entered. Now, there will be occasions where there are other transactions that maybe you haven't got set up as a recurring entry, or an item or a payment is going to happen, for instance, like I think someone's mentioned just wages there. So again, wages, you can put an estimate in there. So if you know what your wage is going to cost or approximate, you can put a manual entry. So to add a manual entry to your forecast, you just click onto the first available blank line. So you can amend the date if needed. It's going off the bottom of my screen there. Let's just type it in. What we're going to put. Can't think of a date off the top of my head. All right, let's just choose the 30th of September. And then choose the account. If there is a reference that you want to enter. So I'll just say, I'll pop a reference in there, and I'll just say wages. As I've entered it manually, it's automatically selected, and then I just need to either enter a receipt or a payment value. So let's say I think, right, my payments for the month or for wages is going to be, let's say, £5,000. So I can pop that in manually. Now I can enter as many of those as I want. So you can come in and, if you've got you know expenses are coming up, but you've got nothing. It's not set up as a recurring expense. Maybe it's an invoice you're expecting to receive, but you haven't received it yet, so you haven't entered it. Again, you can pop that in there. Now you can enter as many of these manual entries as you want. You can enter both payments or receipts, so just a case of popping those in if needed. So again, just gives you that added little bit of flexibility, and obviously if you close out, it would retain that. It would retain that manual entry as well. Now, as far as reporting is concerned, and this is where I always think this option's been around for quite a while, but there's no reports as such available for this option. The only thing you've really got available to you, reporting wise, is either to print out that information or send the information across to Excel. It's quite common that people will send reports to Excel anyway, so it's probably wanting to manipulate the figures or the layout that little bit different as well, or even just so they can transfer that information across to maybe other reports or onto emails, etc. if needed. Send to Excel is available just about throughout the software. So you must have the desktop version of Excel installed for this option to work. So just give it a click. It's just opened on my other screen, so I'll drag that across just so you can see it. So again, you've got your the summary area from the cash flow. You've got the sort of the bank accounts area, so you can see which banks were included, what the balance is, minimum limits, etc. And then if we scroll a little bit further down, you've got the transactions, whether they were included, receipt, payment value, and obviously balance for the day at the end of that period. So again, nice and straightforward to get that information across. But really, as far as reporting is concerned, that's the only option you've got where I suppose within the software with regard to cash flow. The only other option you've got really is running specific reports and merging those together yourself. So Anita, I hope that answers your question with regard to the wages and putting in that provisional figure. Hope that makes sense. Well, that's about it as far as the cash flow option is concerned. Not a great deal more to tell you about or to run a demo on in that instance. So just to summarize these and just to remind you where these figures are coming from. So your regular payments, just close out of that one for a second. So if you haven't already looked at it, regular payments refers to these within bank accounts. You've got this recurring items. So you can set up various transaction types. So things like if you've got things like direct debits set up, money coming in or going out. You've got regular charges going out. So as a standard, maybe a bank payment. Maybe you do monthly transfers, loan repayments, anything like that you can set up as a recurring item. The idea with that one is it just saves you having to manually enter that one. Now, the only thing to be aware of, and it's thinking sort of a little bit beyond recurring items as well, is that a lot of people these days, they start using the bank feeds option. Now, bank feeds, when you download your transactions from your bank, you can set up rules, etc., so that the transactions are automatically added into your accounts. And a lot of people just, rather than set up things like recurring items, they just let those transactions download from the bank and then let them process in. So essentially almost happening in as and when they actually hit your bank account. Now, those types of transactions would not be set up here, and therefore would not be included in the cash flow option. So it's something to be aware of. It's becoming much more popular these days, the bank feeds option. There's been some good developments in that area as well recently. So if you haven't attended a recent webinar on that one, do come along, get yourself signed up for one of those, and you'll see how it can save you time and you see how to process a bank feed. But it is just something to be aware of. So regular payments and regular receipts is all about your bank recurring items. Your forecast payments and your forecast receipts, it's all about your invoices on your sales and your purchase ledger accounts. Now, if anyone goes into the cash flow option, so again, still within bank accounts and cash flow, as I mentioned, if you're on version 29, you've got your help option in the top right, but you can also just press F1 as well on just about any version. So that would take you into the new style help center, and it's this option here. So how do I do a cash flow forecast? So that article take you through pretty much exactly what I've just taken you through today. So preparing your cash flow forecast window itself, so date range, and then it will explain the transactions as well. So where do those transactions come from, what's included, and then you've got your transaction list as well, which transactions are included, etc. So it'll have all the information on that you need, which is why I didn't go to the far end to create detailed slides in this case. You've got all the up-to-date information readily available to you. Right, now if you've got any questions, I will come back to them in just a moment. I'm going to pop back to the slides, but that brings us to the end of the initial demo, unless anyone's got any questions. But we'll try picking those up in a moment. Now, you will receive an email later today containing links to register for future webinars and obviously watch recordings, and there should be a recording of this one available by then as well. We try and attach that to the email these days. Again, if anyone wants a copy of the slides, although I would encourage you to go down the information in the Help Center route, that's still available to you. If you've got any questions, pop them in now. Just while we're waiting for those questions to come through though, just want to quickly mention some of the upcoming sessions we've got planned in. So bit of a short notice this one, but next week we're running a one on custom fields. We just literally added a few extra sessions in for the next couple of weeks. So if you haven't looked at the timetable just over the last, well, since yesterday, we've got custom fields as a new session that we just added yesterday. And then the following week, we're back to tips and tricks, which is always a very, very popular session, that one. Come along. There's probably things staring you in the face in your software just to help you work that bit easier. So filtering your lists, applying colors, using function keys, loads of great tips in that session. So again, get yourself signed up. What else are we going to be covering? We've got importing data, which had some fantastic feedback on importing data this week. We've got some other sessions booked in for that one. Importing data can be a really big time saver. So next week, I think we're going to be looking at products and also transactions as well. So your regular transactions, if you don't want to use recurring items, for instance, that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it could be that you set them up on the likes of a spreadsheet and then just import that information. And again, that can be a big time saver. But loads of sessions, or October sessions, will be available to book on as of early next week. I'm not sure exactly what we're covering yet, but there's going to be some repeat sessions and loads of new sessions in amongst that as well. But if you haven't used custom fields before, that's the one I would encourage you to get yourself signed up for. So custom fields, it's available within the likes of your customer records, your suppliers, on invoices and product records these days, so you can add additional information. And then you can filter your list based on that information. So it might just be a case you want to record additional information, but you've got other uses, so filtering, helping you to improve your reporting, etc., to get only the information that you require. Again, links are included on your follow-up email, and you get that within around about an hour's time. But other webinars, do check out the recordings though. Links are included on your follow-up email. So we run a series of credit control sessions to help support you with cash flow. Getting paid online, we ran a session on Wednesday this week where we looked at a PO and how that integrates with Sage. So including that Pay Now button on your invoices, statistically, you'd get paid that little bit quicker, a bit easier as well for yourself because you don't need to record that payment manually. Invoice payments, we do have a session booked in for that one. We've just had to that one has now been moved from next week until towards the end of October now. But we're covering invoice payments, which is very similar, including that Pay Now button on your invoices, just using a slightly different service. Don't overlook the obvious though. Adding your bank details to your invoices or including your payment terms, adding that information, making sure it's there to spell out when customers need to pay you by. Make sure that's included. So loads of options on there. Have a good look through the webinars, the recordings, and hopefully that will help. So back to questions. Let's have a quick look. Again, Anita's comment. So obviously lack of reports is the main drawback for you there, Anita. Yeah, I think I've got to agree with you. There needs to be more reporting in that area. At the moment, it will be a case if you wanted that information, unless you're really clued up on Excel, then you would struggle to get that information at the moment, other than running reports and copying and pasting that information yourself. So as I say, the only information really option you've got is viewing it on screen or using the send to Excel option. If you've got any feedback though on that type of thing, and that goes for anything, and I'm sure many of you have been on my webinars before where I've mentioned this, if you've got any suggestions for enhancements to the software, I would encourage you to get that logged with us. Nice and easy to do that. All you would do, just within your software, click your home option, top left. So give that a click. Your screens may look a little bit different to what I've got listed. So there's your free webinars link as well. So nice, easy way to access webinars, see what's coming up. But it's this option here, the roadmap. If you've never used this before, all you would do, just give it a click. It'll open a web page for you. This is where you can get up to speed with features that have been delivered, what's coming next, and what we're working on. But a little bit further down, you've got your opportunity to have your say as well. So clicking this will take you across to what's currently termed Sage City. This is where we host all of our what we term our roadmap. So this is where you can submit suggestions. So you can see when whether he's put on 15th. So that one's from today. So BOM without stock transfer. So kit building, edit foreign currency transactions. So sometimes there'll just be technical queries popped on there, but if you've got any suggestions of what you'd like to see developed or included in the software, or maybe even any issues that you come across that a slight change would make it just that little bit easier to process, get them added. You will need to log into it, so you do need to set yourself up with a log-on, which is nice and easy if you don't already have one. You'll just get a login option at the top, or you'll be prompted with a banner normally across here to say you need to log in to do this. Click your link, you'll be set up in literally a minute or two, and then you'll be able to pop on there. You can obviously come in, you can read. If you've logged in as well, you can comment on them. And you can also vote on these options as well using the plus or minus options. So get involved, engage with us and let us know what it is that you need. Now that's the only question I've currently got, I think, from outstanding at the moment. Sorry, the other one was a little bit from earlier. Let me have a quick look through. So Donald's question earlier, can you run these reports in archive years? So if you're not familiar with our company archive, if you've archived as part of your year end, then just it's file, open, and then you've got the company archive option. Now, I don't actually have one that I can access, but you would just select your archive that's listed for whatever period that's for, and then click open and log into it. And then again, you would just have almost like normal use of the software. But remember, an archive is a read-only company, so you can't make any changes in there. The other one was from Lucy. So Lucy's just asking, aside from the cash flow forecast, can I run a cash flow actuals? If you're looking at actual transactions, so I suppose I suppose if you're looking at the cash flow based on what's happened so far, there's not a cash flow option as such for that one. So if you want to see totals, it'd be a case of, I suppose, going through your management reports for that type of thing. The only thing you've got within the cash flow area is that you can tick the box to say which bank accounts you want to include, and that will give you a summary, but it doesn't give you the actual, it doesn't list the individual transactions themselves. The only way you're going to get that would be to probably via nominal, and it would be a case of maybe going into your nominal, choosing the relevant bank account. So if I just picked that one as an example, the current account, and within reports, you'd be then going down the likes of the nominal activity report. So that would give you the list of transactions and the sort of what you would, the balance at the end of that period that you specify it for as well. That would be about as close as you could get currently. If you're thinking beyond that though, get in touch with our support team. You know, if it's specific information that you do need and you can't find it, then get in touch with our support team and they can discuss that with you. Hopefully point you in the right direction. We do have a report design service as well. So maybe if it's a report that's not available to you, but it's something that you would really benefit from, yes, put it on as a request to say an improvement to the software via the roadmap, but there's always the option, you know, if you can't wait for that, then we do have that report design service. So it is possible. Report design service generally a paid for service, but again, just get in touch with our support if you wanted more information about that. Right, okay, we're just about on time. So back to the slides. Just want to take a quick opportunity to thank you for your time this morning. I hope you found it useful. Again, it's one of these sessions that it's probably a bit like a what I would term a Marmite feature. It's either one you're going to use or you think, well, I'm not going to use that. If you're not going to use it, yeah, remember about that tip at the beginning. If you don't want to use it and you think, well, actually, I could just declutter my toolbar a little bit, you can hide those options. So right-click your toolbar and you can switch options on and off. And that goes for just about any ledger within your software. Just makes it visually that bit easier to use then within your software. But thanks for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any feedback for the session today, again, as usual, little exit survey pops up as you leave. If you can take a minute to complete that, share any thoughts, ideas that you have, that'd be greatly appreciated. Love reading those comments. And your follow-up email with links to register for future webinars and also to watch recordings, that will be with you in around about an hour's time. But that brings us to the end of the webinar. Hopefully I'll see you on some other sessions soon. Have a great weekend and hopefully we'll see you next week on some sessions soon. Many thanks.